Good evening. From 2013 to 2019, in just 2,190 days, 7,666 people were killed by police violence. Black people are almost 3 times more likely to be killed by police. Hi, my name is Julia Jordahl-Henry. Hi, my name is Julia Jordahl-Henry. I'm 19. I graduated from Wellesley High School last year. I have lived in Wellesley my entire life. I may appear white, but I am half black. And I cannot remember a time I did not know what race was and why it meant my sister would be treated differently to me. As a white-passing, biracial woman with a twin sister that appears more black than I do, the difference between my experience compared to my sisters in Wellesley Public schools has centered around my white privilege. In my 13 years in Wellesley schools, I was never sent to the principal's office by a teacher. Meanwhile, my sister was sent many times, especially in Fiske Elementary school. As a child, I thought I was just lucky. My teachers were just the nicer ones. I was just more clever about my mischief than my sister was. As I grew older, I realized I could be just as mischievous as my sister, but my teachers did not expect it of me. So when I was fooling around, they yelled at the Latino or the black kid sitting silently next to me instead. So at a young age, I realized just how much I benefited from being white passing. But I was still so sheltered and privileged, I did not know to what extent. When I was in middle school, I was confronted with just how powerful my white privilege is. My father is a Harvard graduate and a computer science programmer. And even though I knew racism was alive and well, I thought those things would protect him from blatant racism. He goes to every single one of my athletic events, and one day, we were driving to my Metro West B team basketball tournament. We were celebrating Anna and me's birthday that weekend, and I sat in, and it was just he and I sat in the passenger seat. I was half asleep for the ride, but I remember him being pulled over 4 times. Every time, the sudden stillness of the car woke me up, but one of the times I remember vividly. The officer coming to the window and speaking to my dad in a very harsh tone. I could feel confusion and anxiety vibrating throughout the car, in my dad's voice, and in how he held the steering wheel tightly with both hands, as he calmly asked why the officer had pulled him over. The officer sounded angry, but then I remember sitting up, opening up my eyes from my nap, peering around my dad's head, and suddenly the officer's demeanor changed entirely. He did not sound angry, and he explained to be careful of speeding, and he let us off with a warning. Each time that my dad was pulled over that day, he got off with a warning. I knew immediately that day that the interaction with that police officer would not have been the same if I had not been in that car and if I had not been white passing. A few years later, that memory was cemented in my brain as my prime example of just how powerful my white privilege was. In 2016, Philando Castile was fatally shot during a traffic stop in front of his girlfriend and his daughter in Minnesota. When I watched that video, his voice had the same tenor of fear that my father had that day. He was careful with his words, and he tried not to make sudden movements. I just knew his hands clutched the steering wheel the same way. He wanted to comply. He informed the officer he was carrying a gun so as not to alarm him. Then he reached for his wallet, as the officer had asked, and he was shot multiple times. His daughter is scarred for life, and she lost her father. When I think back to the change in the officer's demeanor, I wonder if my whiteness meant he knew he couldn't get away with harassing my father. But I knew it was my white privilege that guaranteed my father would not be shot in front of me for a broken taillight.
It's okay.
If someone asked me to go through all the ways I've been heard over my black peers, or more was expected of me, or I was punished less severely for the same mistakes, simply because of my lack of melanin, I could write a book longer than the Bible. My hope is that I could write a book just as long of how I use my white privilege to amplify black voices, to fight racial injustice, and to end white supremacy. So I'm asking, if you care about a black person for any reason, whether they are your favorite athlete, or musician, mentor, or peer, best friend, or stranger, choose to fight for them like they are your sibling or your parent, because lives are on the line and black people don't get that choice. That's all. Thank you.